Please, don't remove my clothes, the alien girl begged, but the human did, and it broke him. Please, don't remove my clothes, the humanoid alien girl begged, her voice trembling as she pressed herself against the wall of the medical bay. Her large iridescent eyes, the color of distant nebulae, were wide with terror. Lieutenant Commander Jeremy Reed stood before her, medical scanner in hand, his broad shoulders blocking the only exit. The rescue mission to Proxima Centauri 4 had been straightforward: extract survivors from the devastated research outpost after the Vexari attack. Finding this girl, woman really, hiding in the rubble had been unexpected. "Look," he said, softening his voice despite the urgency. "I need to assess your injuries. Those bandages are soaked through." The alien woman clutched the tattered remnants of her clothing tighter. Her skin, where visible, had a faint bluish tint that reminded Jeremy of Earth's oceans. Her features were startlingly human-like. 2 arms, 2 legs, a face with expressions he could read, yet undeniably alien with those luminescent markings tracing her temples. "I can handle it myself," she insisted, her accent giving the universal translator a workout. "Your assistance is appreciated, human, but unnecessary." Jeremy sighed, running a hand through his short brown hair. "I've been a combat medic for 15 years. Trust me, there's nothing I haven't seen." The ship's medical bay hummed quietly around them. Outside the viewport, the devastated landscape of Proxima 4 stretched to the horizon. Buildings reduced to rubble, vegetation scorched black. The Vexari had been thorough in their destruction. "My name is Jeremy," he tried again, setting down the scanner and raising his empty hands. "What's yours?" She hesitated, eyes darting between his face and the door. "Lina," she finally said. "My designation is Lina Nix." "Well, Lina, I'm not leaving until I know you're not going to collapse from internal bleeding the moment I turn my back." A hint of something, perhaps resignation, crossed her face. "You humans are stubborn." "It's our defining characteristic," Jeremy replied with a half smile. "That and our charming bedside manner." For a moment, he thought he saw the ghost of amusement in her eyes before it vanished behind fear again. "The wounds are extensive," she admitted, "but they are not life-threatening." "Let me be the judge of that." Jeremy picked up the scanner again. "I'll be professional." Military protocol. Lina's shoulders slumped slightly. "You will regret this insistence?" "I doubt that." "Very well." Her voice had gone flat, emotionless. "But remember, human, you demanded this." She slowly released her grip on her clothing, allowing the tattered fabric to fall away from her shoulders. Jeremy kept his expression neutral through years of battlefield discipline, but nothing could have prepared him for what he saw. Her blue-tinted skin was a canvas of cruelty. Methodical scars crisscrossed her torso and arms. Not random battle wounds, but deliberate patterns. Some were surgical in precision. Others were clearly meant to maximize pain. Burn marks in geometric shapes. Evidence of systematic torture that made his stomach clench. "Damn," he whispered, the word escaping before he could stop it. Lina's eyes were fixed on the floor, her posture rigid with shame. "I warned you." Jeremy swallowed hard, forcing his professional training to override his horror. Without a word, he reached for a thermal blanket and gently wrapped it around her shoulders, covering the evidence of brutality. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. "The same ones who destroyed your outpost," she answered. "The Vexari consider information extraction an art form." Jeremy's jaw tightened. "These aren't just interrogation techniques." "No," she agreed. "They are also warnings to others. Examples of what happens to those who resist." The medical scanner in his hand beeped, confirming what he already suspected. The wounds were old, scarred over. Her current injuries were superficial by comparison. "You're a survivor," he said, meeting her eyes. "Those scars don't make you less. They make you a warrior." Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, perhaps, or disbelief. "Your reaction is unexpected." "What did you expect?" "Disgust, revulsion." Her voice was barely audible. "That is the typical response." Jeremy carefully set the medical supplies aside and pulled up a chair, sitting to bring himself below her eye level. A non-threatening position. Let me tell you something about humans, Lina, he said. We're pretty damn good at recognizing courage when we see it. For the first time, she looked directly at him. Really looked as if seeing past the uniform to the man beneath. The silence between them hummed with unspoken understanding. Now, Jeremy said, reaching for a regenerative patch, let's deal with these fresh cuts, and then you can tell me how you managed to survive when everyone else at the outpost didn't. As he worked, the tension in her shoulders gradually eased. Outside, the twin moons of Proxima 4 began their ascent over the devastated landscape, casting silver light across the ruins of what had once been a thriving research facility, and what would soon become the unlikely beginning of something neither of them could yet imagine. Morning light filtered through the viewport, casting golden patterns across the medical bay. Lina sat on the examination table, now dressed in standard-issue Alliance medical garments, loose-fitting and practical, though they hung awkwardly on her slender frame. Jeremy entered with 2 steaming mugs. Thought you might want something warm. It's coffee, well, the closest approximation our synthesizers could make to what you might find familiar. Thank you, she said, accepting the mug with both hands. Their fingers brushed momentarily, and Jeremy noticed how her luminescent markings pulsed slightly brighter at the contact. How are you feeling? He asked, leaning against the counter opposite her. Better. Your medical technology is effective. She sipped the coffee cautiously, then raised an eyebrow in pleasant surprise. Jeremy studied her in the morning light. Despite everything, there was a quiet dignity about her that he found compelling. The blue tint of her skin seemed to shimmer subtly when she moved, like sunlight on water. The captain wants to debrief you when you're ready, he said. Standard procedure for survivors. Lina's grip tightened on the mug. Of course. But I told him you needed rest first. Her eyes met his, questioning. Medical authority, Jeremy explained with a slight smile. Even captains don't argue with the chief medical officer. You're protecting me, she observed. Why? Jeremy considered his answer carefully. Let's just say I've seen enough people push beyond their limits. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but charged with unspoken questions. There's something you should know, Lina finally said, setting down her mug. Something I haven't told you. Jeremy waited, giving her space to continue. The Vexari. She paused, struggling with the words. They didn't just torture me for information. They were experimenting. Experimenting? Jeremy straightened, instantly alert. Lina nodded, then turned slightly, pulling aside the collar of her garment to reveal a small, almost invisible line at the base of her neck. There's something inside me. Here, I can feel it sometimes. Moving. Jeremy approached, professional instincts taking over as he examined the nearly invisible scar. Our scanners didn't detect anything unusual. It's designed to be undetectable to standard technology. The Vexari are nothing if not thorough. Her voice was bitter. But that's not all. I know things, Jeremy. Things they wanted badly enough to do this to me. She gestured vaguely at her covered body, where he knew the map of scars lay hidden. What kind of things? Their next targets, deployment patterns, weaknesses in their shield technology. Her eyes met his, intense and urgent. Information that could save millions of lives. Why didn't you tell me this yesterday? Would you immediately trust a stranger you just met? She countered. Jeremy conceded the point with a nod. Fair enough. Besides, she added softly, I needed to know what kind of man you are. The implication hung in the air between them. She had been testing him, and apparently he had passed. We need to report this to command immediately, Jeremy said, reaching for his comm unit. Lina's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. No, not yet. Why not? Because I don't know what this thing inside me does, she explained, her voice dropping to a whisper. It could be tracking my location. It could be recording everything I say. It could be waiting. Jeremy looked down at her hand on his wrist, then back to her face. Then we need to get it out of you. Your scanners can't even detect it. How would you remove it? I'll figure something out. The determination in his voice surprised even him. Lina studied his face, then slowly released his wrist. You humans are remarkably confident in the face of impossible odds. It's another one of our defining characteristics, he replied with a half smile. Something shifted in her expression, a softening around her eyes, a slight curve of her lips. I'm beginning to see that. The moment stretched between them, the air suddenly charged with awareness. Jeremy became conscious of how close they were standing, of the faint, unfamiliar scent of her, something like ozone and sweet herbs. There's something else about humans you should know, Jeremy said, his voice lower than before. What's that? Lina asked, not moving away. We're terrible at hiding our attractions. Her markings pulsed brighter, and Jeremy wondered if that was the equivalent of a blush. Is that so? Afraid so. Completely transparent, his eyes held hers. Especially when we meet someone brave and brilliant who happens to have the most fascinating eyes we've ever seen. Lina's lips parted slightly in surprise. That's very direct. Like I said, terrible at hiding it. He smiled but didn't move closer, giving her space to retreat if she wanted. She didn't. Instead, she tilted her head slightly. In my culture, such directness would be considered either offensive or a sign of serious intent. And in this case, I haven't decided yet, she replied, but the pulse of her markings betrayed her. Jeremy chuckled softly. Well, let me know when you do. The tension between them was interrupted by the ship's comm system. Lieutenant Commander Reed to the bridge. Priority message from command? Jeremy sighed. Duty calls. Will you be all right here? Lina nodded, something unreadable in her expression. I'll be fine. But Jeremy? He paused at the door. Be careful who you trust with what I've told you. The Vexari have infiltrated more worlds than you know. As the door closed behind him, Jeremy couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more interesting. The corridor to the bridge stretched longer than Jeremy remembered. Each step felt weighted with the implications of Lina's revelations. The implant, the intelligence she carried, the way her markings pulsed brighter when he stood close. Captain Harding was waiting, his weathered face grim beneath the harsh bridge lighting. Reed, good. Oh, close the door. Jeremy complied, noting the absence of the usual bridge crew. Sir, Harding activated a secure holographic display. This came through on encrypted channels 10 minutes ago. Priority Alpha. The display flickered to life, showing a security profile. Lina's face rotated slowly in the projection, alongside biometric data in a glaring red caution high-risk designation. Alliance intelligence has flagged your patient as a potential security threat, Harding said, watching Jeremy carefully. They believe she may be carrying Vexari surveillance tech, or worse. Jeremy kept his expression neutral despite the hammering of his heart. Based on what evidence, sir? Behavioral algorithms, migration patterns, and the fact that she's the only survivor from a research station that housed some of our most sensitive xenobiology projects. Harding leaned forward. They want her in containment, Reed. Immediately. With respect, Captain, she's still recovering from significant trauma. That's not your call. Harding's eyes narrowed. Is there something you're not telling me, Lieutenant Commander? Jeremy hesitated, Lina's warning echoing in his mind. Be careful who you trust. But this was Captain Harding, a decorated officer with an unimpeachable record. She mentioned the possibility of an implant, sir. Something the Vexari put in her during captivity. Harding's expression darkened. And you're just reporting this now? She only told me this morning. Our scanners didn't detect anything unusual. Vexari tech is designed to evade standard scans. Harding ran a hand over his close-cropped hair. This changes things. We need to... The ship's alarm cut him off, a piercing wail that sent Jeremy's hand instinctively to his sidearm. Medical emergency in Bay 3, the automated system announced. Medical emergency in Bay 3. Lina's Bay. Go, Harding ordered. But this conversation isn't over. Jeremy was already moving, sprinting down the corridor, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Had Alliance intelligence already made their move? Was it the implant? Had she tried to escape? He burst into Medical Bay 3 to find Lina on the floor, her body convulsing, back arched in a painful curve. The medical garments clung to her sweat-soaked skin as she writhed, her markings flashing erratically like malfunctioning circuitry. Lina! Jeremy dropped to his knees beside her, medical training taking over as he stabilized her head. What's happening? Her eyes snapped open, glowing with an unnatural intensity. It's activating, she gasped between spasms. I can see. See what? Lina, stay with me. There are plans, ships, moving. Each word seemed torn from her. They're coming, for me. Jeremy grabbed a neural stabilizer from the nearby cart and pressed it against her neck. The convulsions gradually subsided, but her markings continued to pulse erratically. They're trying to take control, she whispered, her voice hoarse. The implant, it's not just for information. It's meant to override my consciousness, turn me into one of them. Jeremy helped her onto the examination table, his mind racing. How long? I don't know. Hours, maybe. The pain. It's getting worse. Her hand found his, gripping with desperate strength. You have to get it out of me. Without proper scans, that kind of procedure would be... I know where it is, she interrupted. I can feel it. Right here. She guided his hand to the base of her skull, where her skin burned unnaturally hot. Please, Jeremy. The door hissed open behind them. Captain Harding stood in the entrance, flanked by 2 security officers. His eyes moved from Jeremy's hand on Lina's neck to their intertwined fingers. Step away from her, Reed, he ordered quietly. She needs medical attention, sir. The implant is active, which is precisely why Alliance protocol demands she be placed in secure containment. Harding's voice was firm but not unkind. We have specialists for this sort of thing. There's no time, Jeremy argued. If this implant takes control, that's not your decision to make. Harding nodded to the security officers. Escort Ms. Nix to containment level B. Jeremy stepped between them and Lina. Sir, with respect, I can't let you do that. A dangerous silence fell. Harding's expression hardened. That sounds dangerously close to insubordination, Lieutenant Commander. It's not insubordination to protect a patient, sir. It's my duty. Your duty is to follow orders. My first duty is to do no harm. Jeremy stood his ground, acutely aware of Lina's labored breathing behind him. And removing her from medical care right now would constitute harm. Harding studied him for a long moment. You've developed feelings for her. It wasn't a question. Jeremy didn't deny it. That compromises your judgment, Harding continued. Stand down, Reed. That's an order. Behind him, Lina gasped in pain. Jeremy turned to see her markings flaring bright, her eyes wide with terror. It's happening again, she whispered. Worse this time. Making his decision, Jeremy reached for a sedative. I need 20 minutes, Captain. That's all I'm asking. 20 minutes to locate and neutralize the implant before it does whatever it's programmed to do. And if I refuse, then you'll have to physically remove me from this bay. Jeremy met his captain's gaze steadily, and we both know how that would end. The tension in the room stretched taut as a wire. Finally, Harding exhaled sharply. 20 minutes, he conceded. Not a second more. And my men stay. Fine. Jeremy turned back to Lina, who was watching the exchange with pain-glazed eyes. You're risking everything, she murmured as he prepared the surgical field. Why? Jeremy's hands moved with practiced efficiency, but his eyes, when they met hers, were anything but clinical. Because some things are worth the risk. Her markings pulsed once brightly in response. And despite the pain, despite the danger, despite the watchful eyes of Harding and his men, something unspoken passed between them, a connection that transcended the conventional boundaries of human and alien, doctor and patient, rescuer and survivor. 20 minutes to save her life. 20 minutes that might cost him everything. Jeremy had never been more certain of any decision. I need you conscious for this, Jeremy said, administering a localized anesthetic to the base of Lina's skull. The implant is integrated with your neural pathways. You'll have to guide me. Lina lay face down on the surgical table, her blue-tinged skin glistening with sweat. In my species, this position would be considered quite intimate, she managed through gritted teeth, attempting humor despite her pain. Jeremy smiled behind his surgical mask. Is that your way of saying I'm moving too fast? A weak laugh escaped her. Humans and their timing. Captain Harding cleared his throat from his position by the door. 14 minutes remaining, Reed. Jeremy nodded, focusing on the micro-scanner readings. The implant remained invisible to standard equipment, but Lina's elevated neural activity created a shadow, a negative space where something foreign interrupted her natural patterns. There, he murmured. I can see the disruption, but not the device itself. It feels like fire, Lina whispered, like something crawling through my thoughts. Jeremy positioned the laser scalpel. I'm going to make a small incision. Tell me if ... Wait! Lina's markings flared suddenly. It's happening again? I'm seeing... Oh, stars! Her body tensed beneath his hands. What do you see? They're coming for me. But not just me. Her voice became distant, as if she were speaking from somewhere else entirely. The research station. They targeted it specifically, because of what I discovered. Jeremy paused, the scalpel hovering above her skin. What did you discover? Their weakness. Her eyes, when she turned her head slightly to look at him, glowed with an unearthly light. The Vexari aren't invincible. They have a fundamental flaw in their genetic structure, a vulnerability to a specific radiation frequency. I was developing a delivery system when they attacked. Harding stepped closer. Is this true? Why do you think they tortured me? Lina's voice cracked. Why they implanted this thing? They need to know how much I told others, and they need to silence me. A fresh wave of pain racked her body, and Jeremy steadied her with a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder. Stay with me, Lina. I'm going to proceed with the extraction. You don't understand, she gasped. The implant is more than surveillance. It's designed to rewrite me, turn me into a weapon against humans. Jeremy exchanged a glance with Harding, whose skepticism had given way to grim understanding. 10 minutes, Reed, the captain said quietly. Jeremy made the first incision. Lina's skin parted beneath the laser, revealing tissue that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Beautiful and alien. No blood flowed, instead a clear fluid with a faint phosphorescent quality seeped from the wound. Your physiology is fascinating, Jeremy murmured, partly to distract her, partly because it was true. Is this how humans flirt during surgery? Lina managed between labored breaths. Only the really good ones, he replied, earning a weak smile. As he worked deeper, the scanner began to detect something, a metallic structure, organic in design, wrapped around her upper cervical vertebrae like a parasitic vine. I see it, Jeremy said. It's more extensive than I thought. The implant has tendrils extending into your brainstem. Cut it out, Lina insisted. All of it. If I sever these connections incorrectly, it could cause permanent damage. If you don't, I become a Vexari puppet. Please, Jeremy. The urgency in her voice made his decision. Jeremy adjusted the laser to its finest setting and began the delicate work of separating the alien technology from Lina's neural tissue. Tell me about your home, he said as he worked, needing to keep her talking, to know her mind remained her own. Eridani Prime, she whispered. Ocean so clear you can see the ancient city, ruins 100 meters down. 2 moons that turn the night sky purple at conjunction. Sounds beautiful. It was. Before the Vexari came, her markings pulsed weakly. They destroy everything beautiful. As Jeremy isolated another tendril of the implant, Lina suddenly gasped. I can see more. They're planning something bigger. A weapon that targets human DNA specifically. They fear you. Us? Why? Because humans adapt. Because you never give up. Because... She broke off with a cry of pain as Jeremy severed another connection. Sorry, he murmured. No, it's clearer now. The implant was clouding my thoughts, but as you remove it... Her voice strengthened. Humans terrify the Vexari because you're unpredictable. All other species they've encountered follow logical patterns. But humans will sacrifice themselves for strangers. We'll fight against impossible odds. We'll show mercy when there's no evolutionary advantage to doing so. Jeremy worked in silence for a moment, absorbing her words. That doesn't sound like a weakness to me. It's not. It's your greatest strength. The Vexari can't comprehend it, so they fear it. 5 minutes, Harding warned. Jeremy had isolated the main body of the implant, a sleek insectoid device no larger than his thumbnail. As he prepared to extract it, Lina's hand shot up, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "Jeremy," she said, her voice suddenly clear and urgent, "when this comes out, there might be a failsafe, a final attempt to control me." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a connection that transcended their different species, their brief acquaintance. "I trust you," she said simply. The words hit him with unexpected force. Trust, from a woman who had every reason never to trust again. "Almost there," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. With surgical precision, he extracted the implant. It came free with a sickening sound, its tendrils writhing as if alive even outside its host. Jeremy quickly sealed it in a containment field. For a moment, Lina lay perfectly still. Then her entire body convulsed, her markings flaring with blinding intensity. "Lina!" Jeremy reached for her, but Harding pulled him back. "Wait," the captain ordered. Lina's back arched impossibly high, her mouth opened in a silent scream. Then, as suddenly as it began, the seizure stopped. She collapsed onto the table, her markings dimming to a soft, steady glow. "Lina!" Jeremy approached cautiously. She turned her head slowly, her eyes finding his, clear, aware, and entirely her own. That was unpleasant. The relief that flooded through Jeremy was so intense it left him lightheaded. He finished closing the incision with a dermal regenerator, his hand steadier than his emotions. "How do you feel?" he asked. Lina sat up slowly, touching the back of her neck. "Like myself, for the first time since my capture." Her eyes met his, filled with something that made his pulse quicken. "You saved me." "Just doing my job," he said, though they both knew it was far more than that. "Your 20 minutes are up, Reed," Harding interrupted, though his tone had softened considerably. "And it seems we have a lot to discuss about these Vexari plans." Jeremy nodded but couldn't look away from Lina. In the aftermath of danger, with the implant removed and her mind her own again, he was struck anew by her resilience, her courage, and yes, her alien beauty. "We'll talk later," he told her quietly, a promise in his voice that had nothing to do with Vexari threats or Alliance protocols. Lina's markings pulsed once, brightly in response. "I'm counting on it, Lieutenant Commander." The secure debriefing room hummed with tension. Lina sat at the center of a semicircle of Alliance officers, her posture perfect despite her recent ordeal. Her markings pulsed steadily now, a healthy rhythm that Jeremy found himself unconsciously tracking from his position near the door. "The Vexari utilize a tripartite DNA structure," Lina explained, manipulating the holographic display with graceful movements. "Unlike your double helix, their third strand makes them highly resistant to radiation, disease, and genetic manipulation, which they consider their evolutionary superiority." Captain Harding leaned forward. "But you found a weakness." "Yes. The third strand isn't fully integrated with the other two. It's more like a parasite that became symbiotic over millennia. Expose it to the correct frequency of gamma radiation, and the bond destabilizes." "Causing what exactly?" asked Commander Fleming, the ship's science officer. "Cellular breakdown, rapid aging, death." Lina's voice remained clinical, but Jeremy noticed how her markings dimmed slightly. Discussing death, even of enemies, troubled her. "I was developing a targeted delivery system when they attacked the station. Do you have the specifications for this radiation frequency?" Harding pressed. "Here." Lina transferred data from her personal device to the ship's system. "But understand, this isn't just a weapon. It's extinction-level technology for their species." A heavy silence fell over the room. The implications were staggering. A potential end to the war that had ravaged half the galaxy. But at what moral cost? "We'll forward this to Alliance Command," Harding finally said. "They'll need to—" The ship's alarm cut him off. Red emergency lights bathed the room as Lieutenant Sutton's voice came over the comm. "Captain to the bridge. Multiple Vexari vessels detected on approach vector." Harding was already moving. "How many?" "3 warships, sir. They'll be in weapons range in 17 minutes. Battle stations. Prepare for emergency jump." Harding turned to Jeremy. "Get her somewhere secure." As the officers rushed out, Jeremy approached Lina, who stood frozen by the holographic display. "They found me," she whispered. "The implant must have transmitted before you removed it." "Come on," Jeremy took her arm gently. "We need to move." They hurried through corridors now bustling with crew members preparing for potential combat. Jeremy guided her to the officers' quarters section, more secure than the medical bay. "These are your quarters?" Lena asked as the door closed behind them. "Temporary ones." "I'm usually in medical." Jeremy checked the security lock. "You'll be safe here until we make the jump." The ship shuddered slightly as the engines powered up. Lena stumbled, and Jeremy caught her, steadying her against him. For a moment, they stood close. Too close for professional boundaries, not close enough for what hummed between them. "Your heart rate has increased," she observed, her hand resting lightly on his chest. "Enhanced hearing," he asked with a half-smile. "Enhanced everything." Her markings pulsed brighter. "My species evolved as hunters. We sense changes." Jeremy didn't step back. "And what changes are you sensing now?" "Your pupils are dilated, respiration elevated, skin temperature rising." Her voice lowered. "In my culture, these would be unmistakable signs of attraction." "They mean the same in mine," Jeremy admitted. The ship lurched again, but neither moved apart. "I've been meaning to ask," Jeremy said, his voice rougher than intended. "Your markings, they change with your emotions. What are they saying now?" Lina's luminescent patterns rippled across her skin in waves of blue-violet light. "They're saying I'm conflicted. About the impropriety of feeling attraction to someone who has seen me at my most vulnerable. In my culture, such intimacy usually comes after formal bonding rituals." Jeremy smiled. "And yet here we are." "Here we are," she echoed, her markings pulsing brighter. "Perhaps near-death experiences transcend cultural protocols." "They tend to clarify what matters," Jeremy agreed. The ship's comms system interrupted. "Attention all personnel. Emergency jump in 30 seconds. Secure all stations." Jeremy guided Lina to sit on the edge of the bed. "Jumps can be disorienting if you're not used to them." "We have similar technology," she said, but didn't resist when he sat beside her. "Lina," Jeremy began, suddenly serious, "what happens after this?" "When we reach Alliance space, I'll share everything I know about the Vexari. Help develop the countermeasure." Her eyes met his. "After that, I don't know." The countdown began over the comm system. "Jump in 10, 9. "I'd like to show you Earth someday," Jeremy said impulsively. "The oceans aren't as clear as Eridani Prime, but they have their own beauty." 8, 7. Lina's markings flared with unexpected brightness. "Is that a formal invitation, Lieutenant Commander?" 6, 5. "The most formal I can manage under the circumstances." His hand found hers. 4, 3. "Then I accept." Her fingers intertwined with his. 2, 1. The universe compressed around them as the jump drive engaged. The familiar sensation of being stretched and compressed simultaneously washed over Jeremy. But this time, with Lina's hand in his, it felt different, like a beginning rather than a transition. When reality reasserted itself, they were still sitting side by side, hands linked. The ship's engines hummed at a different frequency. They had escaped immediate danger. "That was intense," Lina said, her markings slowly returning to their normal luminescence. "The jump?" "That too." Her eyes met his with newfound boldness. Jeremy laughed softly, then sobered. "You know, when I first removed your clothes in the medical bay and saw what they'd done to you." Lina tensed slightly. "Please, I don't want your pity." "It's not pity." Jeremy chose his words carefully. "It was anger, sorrow, and something else I couldn't name then. And now I think it was recognition of your strength, your resilience." His voice dropped lower. "Your beauty despite everything they tried to take from you." Lina's markings rippled in complex patterns. "In my culture, speaking of physical beauty is reserved for the most intimate relationships." "I apologize if I've overstepped." "You haven't." Her hand reached up to touch his face, fingers tracing the contours with scientific curiosity and something far less clinical. Humans express attraction so directly, it's refreshing. The ship's comm system crackled. Lieutenant Commander Reed to the bridge. Jeremy sighed. Duty calls. Go, Lena said. I'll be here. The promise in those 3 simple words stayed with him as he headed for the bridge. His mind divided between the tactical situation ahead and the woman waiting in his quarters. A woman whose scars had broken his heart but whose spirit had begun to heal it in ways he never expected. We're in the Cygnus Void, Captain Harding announced grimly as Jeremy entered the bridge. A jump was partially successful. We escaped the Vexari warships, but we're far off course. Jeremy surveyed the star chart hovering above the command console. The Cygnus Void, a sparse region with few habitable systems and no Alliance outposts. Communications, he asked. Lieutenant Sutton shook her head. Long-range systems are offline. Something about the jump destabilized the quantum relays. How long to repair? Engineering estimates 48 hours minimum, Harding replied. Until then, we're on our own, and the Vexari will be searching. Jeremy nodded, processing the implications. What are your orders, sir? Maintain stealth protocols, begin repairs, and Harding hesitated, his weathered face showing rare uncertainty. Continue working with Miss Nix. If the Vexari are this determined to find her, her information is even more valuable than we thought. Understood, sir. As Jeremy turned to leave, Commander Fleming approached with a data pad. Lieutenant Commander, our sensors detected something unusual during the jump. A radiation signature emanating from Miss Nix's quarters. Jeremy took the pad, scanning the readings with growing concern. This frequency, it matches the Vexari vulnerability she described, Fleming finished. Exactly. Is she in danger? Unknown, but I'd recommend a full bioscan immediately. Jeremy was already moving toward the exit. Keep me updated on our status, Captain. Reed, Harding called after him. Remember your duty. The unspoken warning was clear. Don't let personal feelings compromise the mission. Jeremy acknowledged it with a nod before hurrying back to his quarters. He found Lina not resting as expected, but standing at his workstation, the containment field with the Vexari implant glowing before her. How did you get that? He demanded, momentarily forgetting his concern in his surprise. I may have implied to your security officer that you authorized me to examine it, she admitted without remorse, her markings pulsing with intensity. I needed to confirm something. Confirm what? This. She manipulated the holographic display, revealing a complex set of coordinates embedded in the implant's code. It's a location, a Vexari facility. I recognize the sector from intelligence reports during my captivity. Jeremy approached, studying the data. What kind of facility? Weapons development, and based on the security protocols encoded here, something significant. Her eyes met his. I believe it's where they're creating the human-targeting bioweapon I glimpsed in my visions. The implications settled heavily between them. A weapon that could eradicate humanity, just as Lina's discovery could potentially eradicate the Vexari. We need to tell Harding, Jeremy began, but stopped when he noticed how Lina's markings were pulsing. Not with their usual steady rhythm, but in erratic, intensifying bursts. Lina? What's wrong? I've been, feeling strange since the implant was removed. She pressed a hand to her temple. At first I thought it was just the aftermath, but it's getting stronger. Jeremy activated his medical scanner, sweeping it over her form. The readings confirmed Fleming's report. Lina's body was emitting radiation at precisely the frequency lethal to Vexari DNA. They didn't just torture you, he realized with growing horror. They modified you. What do you mean? You're emitting the same radiation frequency you identified as the Vexari weakness. At low levels, but it's increasing. Jeremy met her eyes. They turned you into a living weapon, Lina. Perhaps as a test subject or as a failsafe, she finished, understanding dawning. If I escaped and shared my knowledge, they could trigger the implant to transform me into a weapon against myself. A warning to others about the price of betrayal. Jeremy ran another scan, focusing on her cellular structure. The radiation isn't harming you. Your physiology must be immune. But anyone near me who carries Vexeri DNA would begin to deteriorate. Her voice trembled. I'm a walking genocide. We'll find a way to neutralize it, Jeremy promised, though he had no idea how. Lina's markings suddenly flared with blinding intensity, and she doubled over in pain. Jeremy caught her, easing her onto the bed. It's accelerating, she gasped. The jump must have triggered something, or removing the implant released a fail-safe protocol. Jeremy held her as another wave of pain passed through her, her body arching against his. When it subsided, she remained in his arms, her face pressed against his chest. If the radiation keeps intensifying, she whispered, I'll become a threat to any ship that rescues me, any station that shelters me. I'll never be able to go home. The despair in her voice cut through him. Without thinking, Jeremy tilted her face up to his. We'll find a solution, together. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, something fundamental shifted between them. The attraction that had been building since their first encounter crystallized into something deeper, more urgent. Jeremy, she breathed, her markings pulsing in sync with her accelerated heartbeat. In my culture, when faced with possible extinction, we seek connection. To remind ourselves what we're fighting to preserve. Her hands moved to the fastenings of her medical garment, hesitant yet determined. Please, she whispered, echoing her first words to him, but with an entirely different meaning. Remove my clothes. The irony wasn't lost on Jeremy. Their journey had come full circle. The first time he'd seen her body, it had broken something in him. Now, as his fingers gently replaced hers at the fastenings, he understood that it had broken only to rebuild him stronger, more compassionate, more human. Are you sure? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. An answer, Lina's markings flared with a brilliant blue light that seemed to illuminate her from within. I want to know this connection with you while I still can. The garment slipped from her shoulders, revealing the map of scars he'd first seen in the medical bay. But now, illuminated by the pulsing light of her markings, they seemed transformed. No longer marks of suffering, but constellations mapping a journey of survival. As Jeremy traced them with reverent fingers, Lina shivered, her markings brightening in response to his touch. In my culture, she murmured, light is the language of the soul, and mine is speaking to yours. What followed was a communion of two beings from different worlds, finding in each other's arms a sanctuary from the darkness that pursued them. Their bodies spoke what words could not, of trust rebuilt from the ashes of trauma, of beauty recognized beneath scars, of hope kindled in the shadow of extinction. And as they moved together in the ancient rhythm known to both their species, Lina's markings pulsed with a radiance that seemed to fill the room, a light that spoke of life, of connection, of possibility, even in the face of impossible odds. Dawn found them entwined, Lina's luminescent markings casting a soft blue glow across Jeremy's sleeping face. She traced the contours of his jaw with gentle fingers, memorizing every detail. In her culture, such intimacy created a bond that transcended the physical, a sharing of life essence that could never be undone. What they'd shared during the night had changed her, not just emotionally, but physically. The radiation readings on Jeremy's discarded scanner showed fluctuations that corresponded precisely with their moments of deepest connection. An idea began to form in her mind, dangerous, perhaps suicidal, but with the potential to save millions. Jeremy stirred, his eyes opening to find her watching him. You're glowing brighter, he observed, voice rough with sleep. A side effect of happiness, she replied with a small smile. Among my people, our markings reveal what we cannot hide. His hand found hers beneath the sheets. No more hiding needed. The ship's comm system interrupted their moment. Lieutenant Commander Reed and Miss Nix to the bridge immediately. They dressed quickly, the easy intimacy of lovers already established between them. As they made their way through the corridors, Lina felt the stares of the crew, some curious, some wary. Word of her condition had spread. Captain Harding and his senior officers were gathered around the tactical display when they arrived. We've got company, Harding announced without preamble. 3 Vexari cruisers entered the system 20 minutes ago. They're conducting a standard search pattern. They're looking for me, Lina said. Yes. And based on their trajectory, they'll find us within 6 hours. Harding's gaze was steady. Our communications are still down. No way to call for backup. Jeremy studied the tactical display. What about the coordinates from the implant? How far is the weapons facility? Commander Fleming manipulated the display. Less than 2 hours at maximum thrust, but we'd be flying straight into Vixari-controlled space. Captain, Lena stepped forward, her markings pulsing with determination. I have a proposal. All eyes turned to her. The radiation I'm emitting, it can be weaponized, focused. If we can get close enough to the facility, I could channel it to destroy their bioweapon before it's deployed against humanity. And how exactly would you channel it? Harding asked skeptically. With my help, Jeremy interjected, understanding dawning in his eyes. The radiation intensifies with emotional states. If we can construct an amplifier tuned to her specific frequency, we could create a targeted pulse, Fleming finished, already calculating. But the power required would be enormous. It could kill her. Not if we calibrate it correctly, Jeremy argued. I've been monitoring the fluctuations. There's a pattern. Lina met his gaze, a silent communication passing between them. What he wasn't saying, that their intimate connection had somehow stabilized the radiation, remained private. There's another component to consider, she added. The Vexari would never expect their own weapon to be used against them. If they captured me, or believed they had, I could get inside the facility. Absolutely not, Jeremy said immediately. It's the only way to get close enough, Lina insisted. They'd bring me directly to the bioweapon lab to study the radiation phenomenon. It's too dangerous, Jeremy argued. More dangerous than letting them complete a weapon that could eradicate your entire species? Lina challenged. Captain Harding watched their exchange with shrewd eyes. You care for each other, he observed. That complicates things. No, sir, Jeremy countered. It simplifies them. I'm going with her. That wasn't part of my plan, Lina protested. It is now. Jeremy turned to Harding. We pose as a captured Alliance officer and his alien prisoner. Once inside, we locate the bioweapon. Lina channels the radiation to destroy it, and we extract before the facility crumbles. Harding considered for a long moment. And the Vexari ship searching for us? A distraction, Jeremy suggested. We leave a radiation signature for them to chase while we take a shuttle to the facility. It could work, Fleming admitted, if we're very, very lucky. Luck has nothing to do with it, Jeremy said with the confidence that had first drawn Lina to him. This is about determination. About refusing to accept extinction as an option. Very well, Harding nodded. You have 4 hours to prepare. Commander Fleming will assist with the amplifier construction. As the others dispersed to their tasks, Jeremy pulled Lina aside. Are you sure about this? No, she admitted, but I'm sure about us. About what we're fighting for. His hand cupped her face. When this is over, she interrupted with a smile. You can show me those Earth oceans you promised. 4 hours later, they stood in the shuttle bay, dressed in modified Vexari prisoner transport uniforms created by the ship's fabricator. The radiation amplifier, a delicate device now integrated into Lina's clothing, hummed with potential energy. The amplifier will channel the radiation through your markings, Fleming explained. When you're ready, this activation sequence will focus it into a directed pulse. And the side effects? Jeremy asked. Fleming hesitated. Unknown, but the strain on her system will be significant. Captain Harding approached as final preparations were made. The decoy radiation signature is deployed. Vexari ships have altered course to pursue. Your window is open. Jeremy nodded, then turned to Lina. Last chance to back out. Her markings pulsed with steady resolve. The first time you removed my clothes, you saw my scars and it broke something in you. Your illusions about a universe without cruelty. Lina dash. Let me finish. She took his hands. But what you didn't see then was how that breaking remade you, made you stronger, more compassionate. Sometimes we must break to become what we're meant to be. Jeremy understood she wasn't just talking about him anymore. Together then. Together, she agreed. They boarded the shuttle, the small craft detaching from the Alliance ship and slipping away into the void, heading toward the coordinates that would lead them into the heart of enemy territory. The Vexari weapons facility loomed before them, a massive structure of dark metal and pulsing energy fields. Their approach had been tense but uneventful, the forged credentials and disguised shuttle passing the automated security protocols. "Ready?" Jeremy asked as they prepared to dock. Lena's markings dimmed to their lowest setting, a technique she'd practiced to appear subdued, defeated. "Ready?" What followed was a carefully choreographed dance of deception. Jeremy, playing the role of Vexari captor, escorted his prisoner through security checkpoints. Lena, head bowed in apparent submission, allowed herself to be scanned and processed. "Specimen for Bioweapons Division," Jeremy stated in flawless Vexari, thanks to the language implant Fleming had programmed for him. "Priority research subject." The ruse worked. Within minutes, they were being escorted deep into the facility toward the very labs where humanity's extinction was being engineered. The moment they entered the main laboratory, Lina knew they'd found their target. Massive containment fields housed what could only be human genetic material, billions of samples being systematically modified. "Now," Jeremy whispered as the door sealed behind them. Lena closed her eyes, focusing on the energy within her. The radiation that the Vexari had intended as her curse, but would now become their undoing. She thought of Jeremy, of their connection, of everything worth fighting for. Her markings blazed to life with blinding intensity as she activated the amplifier. The radiation surged through her body, channeled and focused by the device, erupting in a pulse of energy that shattered containment fields and disintegrated Vexari DNA sequences. Alarms blared as the facility's systems detected the breach. Jeremy grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the emergency exit as the first explosion rocked the structure. "Stay with me," he urged as her steps faltered, the radiation pulse having drained her strength. "Always," she promised, forcing her legs to keep moving. They fought their way to the shuttle bay, Jeremy's combat training proving as effective against Vexari guards as human opponents. As explosions cascaded through the facility behind them, they launched the shuttle, breaking free just as the weapons lab erupted in a spectacular detonation. Lina collapsed into the co-pilot seat, her markings flickering weakly. "Did we succeed?" Jeremy checked the sensors. "Complete destruction of the facility. And look," he pointed to the readings, "the radiation levels in your body are stabilizing. The pulse must have reset whatever the Vexari did to you. Or perhaps," she said with a tired smile, "it was simply being with you." As they set course back to the Alliance ship, Lena rested her head on Jeremy's shoulder. "You know, in my culture, what we shared creates a bond that cannot be broken. We are essentially married." Jeremy laughed softly. "Is that your way of proposing? Is that your way of accepting?" His answer was a kiss that made her markings pulse with joy. 6 months later, they stood together on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the setting sun painting the water in shades of gold and crimson. The war with the Vexari had reached a stalemate after the destruction of their bioweapon facility and the revelation of their genetic vulnerability. Neither side willing to risk the extinction of their species. Lena, now an official Alliance diplomatic liaison, had become instrumental in negotiating the fragile peace. Her unique perspective, having been both victim and weapon of the Vexari, gave her insights no human diplomat could match. "It's not as clear as Eridani Prime," Jeremy said, nodding toward the ocean, "but it has its own beauty." "Yes," Lina agreed, her markings pulsing contentedly in the gathering twilight. "Different, but no less magnificent." She turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. "When you first removed my clothes and saw my scars, I thought you would see only damage. Instead, you saw me, all of me, and it broke you open to a greater compassion than I'd ever witnessed. And when you asked me to remove your clothes a second time," Jeremy replied, drawing her close, "it healed something in both of us that we didn't know was wounded." As darkness fell, Lina's markings illuminated the space between them with a soft blue glow, a light born not of radiation or alien technology, but of something far more powerful. The connection between two beings who had seen each other at their most vulnerable and found, in that vulnerability, their greatest strength.